Hi guys, it's ASBYT and I've been using the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra for around about 2 weeks now, and I waited on my full review because I wanted to get it right for you because it's a complicated one. There are so many things I love, but equally there are a couple of drawbacks which might be deal breakers for you. I appreciate that some of you guys actually make purchase decisions based off these sorts of videos, so it's only fair that if you're going to be shelling out £1,200 on something like this, that you get to know the real everyday world use of this phone and not just a list of specs. So as this video is for you, drop a like on the video if you're a legend, and thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. So for context, so that you can place this review, I'm a straight tech fan. I show no brand allegiance or loyalty to a specific company. If any company produces a great product, I'll let you know about it, but equally I'm not afraid to call out a company if their product doesn't quite make the grade. So firstly, this is Samsung's most premium, most expensive flagship currently available on the market, and with that, it carries some weight. At this sort of price, you're expected to produce something that very few manufacturers can compete with. You have to be right at the bleeding edge of new technology, but equally, you're meant to do the basics to the finest standard. And the Note 20 Ultra does that for the most part, but, well, you'll see. So this is the first phone to be made from the strongest Gorilla Glass Victus. It has a max brightness of 1609 nits according to DisplayMate, brighter than pretty much any other phone available. We've got a 120Hz refresh rate, Quad HD resolution, 12GB of RAM, 512GB of internal storage, 1TB of external storage, a 108MP camera setup, and 8K video. Oh, and the industry-leading Snapdragon 865 Plus chipset.
Now you got the Exynos 990, mate.
What?
Outside of the US and China, you get the Exynos chip.
Really? Stitch up? We'll get to Xgate in a minute. There's no one there. So all round on the surface of things, some huge attributes, but let's dive a little bit deeper. So Gorilla Glass Victus. This comes with big claims from Corning, who make the glass of 4 times better scratch resistance and more than 2 times the drop height safety. Now, while I haven't got any scratches really yet, apart from on the pre-installed screen protector, which is good, don't be fooled into thinking that this is an indestructible phone. It's not 4 times and 2 times respectively better than Gorilla Glass 6, the previous generation, but other glass manufacturers instead. So best glass really available on a smartphone, which is fantastic, but not a huge difference from the Note 10 Plus. Skins and cases are still advised if you want to keep this bar of bronzy gold goodness going for a few years. Fingerprint scanner seems better than before in terms of speed and reliability, a couple of issues with dirty or wet fingerprints aside, and the only thing that bugs me really display-wise is the lack, you know what I'm going to say, of 1 HD? What is that? 120Hz refresh rate and Quad HD at the same time. I said in my last video that that decision was probably made due to their worry about battery performance, and that may still hold some truth. There were suggestions that the Exynos 990 chipset couldn't quite deal with both at the same time, therefore they held back on the Snapdragon version as well so that it seemed more fair. But this appears to have now been debunked. Do you need 120Hz and Quad HD at the same time? No. You definitely don't. But should you on a phone that costs £1,200? Probably. So build quality, fantastic. Display, on the whole, next level. But how does the camera really stack up? Oh, and if you're enjoying this video so far, a sub would mean a lot to me. Now I know the camera bump has received some flack, but personally I don't really mind it, other than this ridiculous wobble on the table. I mean, come on. Of course, if that really bothers you, and a lot of people do tend to use cases anyway, it's a lot less. I love what they've done with the 3 identical camera rings, and the finish looks great. But what about the actual camera performance? Well, first and foremost, for everyday standard photos, it's excellent and right up there. Pictures are insanely sharp, great details, rich, social media friendly, bright, saturated colours. Classic Samsung. You could argue it's got a better all-round camera than the likes of the Google Pixel 4, the iPhone 11 Pro, due to a brilliant wide-angle lens, its great zoom capabilities and decent low-light performance. It does nearly everything extremely well. But it's not perfect, and in some aspects it's actually worse than those 2 phones, and you'll see what I mean. Default from the box, photos are shot at 12 megapixels, and the 108 megapixel mode only comes into play if you change it in the settings. Now, traditionally, the larger the sensor, the greater the detail. It allows in more light, creating this razor-sharp focus in the foreground, and the background tends to just naturally blur away, which on DSLR cameras, for example, usually produces some incredible shots. On a smartphone camera setup that has a massive sensor, technically the same can be said here. However, in practice, the results are usually a lot less striking. Yes, photos can be sharper. If you do want to punch in and crop, you will get better detail, but often this only works well if you're cropping in the middle of the photo, as the focus tends to soften as you go towards the edges. For this reason alone, and the incredibly large file sizes, I tend to just use the 12 megapixel mode most of the time. I don't think currently, and this may change, I personally don't think currently right now, the huge sensors of 48, 64 and 108 megapixels, to name a few, are huge selling points. I feel it's almost become a bit of a marketing gimmick, a little bit of a bluff, much like Apple do every year with their "this is the best iPhone we've ever made" statements. For me, you can still get just as good, if not better in some situations, a camera experience from a 12 megapixel sensor from the likes of the iPhone, the Pixel 4, and even the 12 megapixel mode on here. The autofocus problems that plagued the S20 Ultra have been improved, but we don't have the 100 times zoom on the Note 20 Ultra like we did there. We just have a maximum of 50, which I'm not too fussed about. 50 times is still more than enough, and to be honest, you still don't get that clear results when you're zooming in that far, but don't get me wrong, it's still amazing that it is possible. 5 times, 10 times, anywhere up to 30 times really, you can still get some really great sharp zoom shots. And I take a sharper 30 times zoom than a blurrier 50 times zoom any day. The front camera is decent, but that's as far as I would really go. Edge detection is hit and miss, and I do seem to get images that appear slightly softer at times. I prefer sharper selfies and portrait shots, but that is of course subjective. And there are some really nice colour tones, and the ability to have a wider shot when needed is a nice touch. It's a nice front camera. Video is a similar story to photos. On the face of it, it's excellent and delivers on nearly every single checkpoint that you want for good video recording. 4K 60 front and back, decent audio, great stabilisation, especially when you're using the super steady mode, nice saturated eye-catching colours if that's your thing, much better autofocus than the S20 Ultra, live focus video which gives you the appearance of that nice cinematic blurry background, and high frame rates for epic slow-mos. Oh, and there's 8K at 24 frames per second, the correct frame rate for cinema. There is still a substantial crop and stabilisation isn't great, but if there is limited movement in the shot and you want to take super high resolution screenshots of pets etc that are notoriously hard to photograph accurately when moving, then go ahead, it's friggin' 8K. In my opinion, the one biggest camera problem that we have on the Note 20 Ultra, and this goes for pretty much every single smartphone camera that I know, again, sorry to hark back outside of the Pixel phones, that's shutter lag. When you tap to take a photo, there is substantial delay before the photo is taken, especially in live focus mode. This doesn't really affect motionless shots, but action shots of pets, moving family members are often still hampered. I've heard from other reviewers that this isn't really a problem anymore, but I definitely still notice it. You can eventually get most of the shots you need if you're patient enough and willing to take a fair few photos to get that right shot, but if you've got one moment, one shot to get that correct shot, then get ready to potentially miss a few memories due to motion blur. And for that one reason alone, I am desperate for somebody to create a Google Cam APK, a decent one that works flawlessly for Exynos chipsets. And speaking of Exynos, let's address the elephant in the room. So everyone outside of the US or China basically will get the Exynos 990 chipset and not the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 Plus. And on the surface, that may not seem the worst news. They're both very competent chips. But underneath the hood, literally, Exynos chips do tend to struggle a little bit more with overheating, which in turn can make them throttle more, affecting performance. It's not night and day, but it's there. On top of that, one of the main factors when choosing a new phone in today's market is to make sure you get an all-day battery, especially when the phone is marketed at the workhorse professionals. I usually say anywhere upwards of 6 hours of screen on time usually does the job for me, but unfortunately the difference in battery life, again between the Exynos and the Snapdragon chips, seems evident. I'm hearing from the guys across the pond in the US that they're getting roughly around 6+ hours of screen on time, whereas I'm really only getting about 5+ hours of screen on time. So there's definitely a difference between the chipsets from what I can see. I'm not the only one. I have seen some of the other UK guys with a similar sort of situation. And if you add that to the fact that you've got 500 mAh less than the S20 Ultra, which was kind of average for me in terms of battery life, it's disappointing. I appreciate that Samsung have appeared to have kind of looked to even the scores by providing a higher minimum storage on the Exynos versions. I think 256 is the minimum for all Exynos variants, whereas 128 is the minimum for the Snapdragon versions. But I personally would take performance and battery life over extra storage. Just my opinion. But this harps back to the beginning statement. If you're producing a phone of £1,200 and you've got two different versions and one of them appears to be performing better for the same price, the people getting the slightly lesser chip will surely be a bit concerned. Like I said, the difference isn't huge by any means, but with all the information that we have, it's there. And hopefully Samsung can address this in a future flagship. And we've managed to get through this whole entire video so far without mentioning this little blighter, the old S Pen, which of course the Note phones are famous for. And the software, of course, as a whole, that's meant to open this dream world for the power user. So let's start with that tiny pen that started this whole Note revolution. Now, yes, there are tons of things you can do with the S Pen that I touched on in previous videos, but let me tell you what I've personally used it for. A toy for my cat. No, just kidding. One feature I find really useful is when I'm jotting down an email, phone numbers or websites, for example, if you hover the pen over them once you've written them, it offers you the chance to visit the website, send an email or phone that specific number, which saves a fair bit of time. The handwriting straightener and change to text feature has also been equally as useful. Signing documents on the go is something that I've been able to do using the S Pen, and I've also used the Smart Select and Pin to Screen option to add images, etc. to documents. While I still feel the S Pen gestures are a bit gimmicky, I do like the screen grab and annotate one, which I've used quite a lot, and the glance feature will be great next season to pin live scores of football matches so that I can carry on with what I'm doing but glance at the results when I want. And talking of football, I have just launched a second channel for Chelsea fans and football fans as a whole. Please don't unsubscribe because I'm a Chelsea fan, but yeah, new content coming soon there. I have on many occasions hooked up my phone to the TV wirelessly using DeX, more on that in a second, and the pen just gives you more accuracy when navigating. The S Pen really does work incredibly seamlessly now thanks to the 9 millisecond of latency and the slick integration with the overall software One UI. There's nothing drastically new here with Samsung's software. It's still not quite as clean as I would like and often feels a little bit cluttered, but it will absolutely suit to the ground those of you who want features galore thrown in your pocket from every angle. From the locking apps to your recent with 2 taps, meaning they stay forever in your RAM and open up instantly without ever loading. The glut of one-handed mode features, which are definitely a nice touch on such a large phone. The link to Windows feature, thanks to the renewed partnership with Microsoft, allowing you to transfer files and photos, etc. instantly, respond to text messages, make calls, etc., giving a nice alternative to Apple's ecosystem for those Windows PC and laptop users. And as DeX is now wireless, which is awesome, you can connect your phone to a compatible smart TV, use apps on the big screen like all of your social medias, Netflix, and showcase files like in presentations, when a phone display just doesn't quite cut it. This feature will really help me out when I'm allowed to travel abroad again and want to watch TV, etc. in a hotel room, meaning I just have to sync my phone to my smart TV and watch away, provided I'm not geo-locked out of streaming because of my new region. Good job, I have a special promo code in the video description for 3 months completely free and a whopping 85% off today's video sponsor, Surfshark VPN. I've been using Surfshark for quite a while now, mainly to encrypt my personal data in a secure tunnel because I'm online so much. And I also use it to connect to a US server and watch US Netflix. If you know, you know. Global governments are starting to also block or even ban certain apps like TikTok, so VPNs are becoming more popular than ever. No getting hacked when using public Wi-Fi or being ad targeted just because you search Peppa Pig once to order a toy for your kid. It's available on pretty much every popular platform and you can use as many devices on one account as you want at the same time. Amongst the glut of features, there's an automatic kill switch which disconnects you from the internet if your server connection drops, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't like it, cancel it. Win-win. So to wrap up, I stand by my original statement. I love this phone. I've been using it as my daily driver for 2 weeks and I'm going to continue using it because there's so much I love here. It's a wonderful phone, but some of the drawbacks that I've mentioned in the video mean it's a really complicated one to recommend. It really depends what phone you've got at the moment and what you're hoping to get from a device. The display is gorgeous, the camera is great, but I'm still waiting for that next leap from Samsung to really jump up that gear, and for a Note phone to have a less than impressive battery is a bit disappointing. And if you're coming from like a Note 8, for example, possibly even a Note 9, it's a substantial jump. But equally, if you're coming from a Note 10 Plus, for example, the differences are a lot less, obviously. Thanks for watching. Remember to drop a like if you're a legend, and a sub would be amazing. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. Stay purity. Peace out.
Do just what you want.